welcome to Council's Week, Thursday, April 30th, 2020. This is our final keynote of the week, leading the NBA during the coronavirus with our special guest, Mark Tatum, Deputy Commissioner of the NBA. We have several hundred live listeners with us from the Collaborative Game Councils, leaders from a wide range of digital companies and divisions, from Amazon, Airbnb, Apple, and Appfolio to Lyft, Microsoft, Target, Workiva, and many, many others. I've known Mark for nearly 25 years. We met in business school, and I'm proud to call Mark a friend. And I'll just pause for a moment because I see that people are still filing in. Glad everybody is here. I'm just going to pause for a moment. As I said, I've known Mark for nearly 25 years. We met in business school, and I'm proud to call him a friend. In business school, you know, there's a lot of networking, but you also get to meet some who are just genuine, authentic human beings, not necessarily looking to quote network, but to be a friend. And that's Mark Tatum. Mark was born in Vung Tau, Vietnam, 50 miles southeast of Saigon, to a Jamaican-American father in the US Air Force and a Vietnamese mother. Mark then came to the United States and grew up where I live now, Brooklyn, New York, and attended Brooklyn Tech, one of New York's prestigious selective public high schools, where as a second baseman, his nickname was Hoover. He helped their baseball team, in fact, win a New York City high school championship at Yankee Stadium. So not only is Mark the COO of the NBA and Deputy Commissioner, but he can tell you he's won a championship at Yankee Stadium. How many can say that? That's pretty cool. Given Mark's background, of course, he has a global view of the world and has been instrumental in many historic initiatives, including the first NBA game in Africa and the launch of the Africa League. Mark, that was set for March of this year, obviously, so that had to be delayed.
March 13th was supposed to be the tip-off in Dakar, Senegal.
That's just so.
We actually postponed the launch of the BAL before we actually suspended the NBA season the week before.
Oh, right, you told me that. Well, I love the NBAs in Africa. As you and I have talked, I've spent some time there, and I'm excited to see where you guys go. Mark, you launched 7 NBA Academies around the world. You debuted the Junior NBA World Championship, first of its kind global youth basketball tournament. Globally, sports brings in about $471 billion in revenue. And Mark, you're one of the top leaders of this important industry. And I'm just going to name some things. There's a lot to say here. You're one of the top 25 most influential minorities in sports, according to Forbes. Sports Business Journal named you to its list of the 50 most influential people in sports business. And for 3 straight years, you were honored by the same organization, Sports Business Journal, with a 40 Under 40 award. And that made you also an entrance into their 40 Under 40 Hall of Fame.
That was a long time ago, Phil.
That's a long time ago. Well, and it's more hair ago for both of us.
For sure.
You sit on a bunch of boards: USA Basketball, the International Basketball Federation, the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame, the LA 28 Summer Olympics. Hopefully we'll be back by then. Mark, what do you think?
I sure hope so.
Harvard Business School's Board of Dean Advisors, the chair of the Harvard Business School Club here in New York, where you do a great job, and I'm a member of that. Also, the Executive Leadership Council, a great group. It's a national organization focused on empowering African-American corporate leaders. Really great stuff. You got your BS in Business Management from Cornell, where you also played baseball, and an MBA from Harvard. You were appointed Deputy Commissioner and COO there at the NBA in 2014, and you're thus second in command of what some outsiders at least estimate, because you guys don't share this, but at more than $9 billion annually in revenue for this multimedia content streaming global juggernaut in 215 countries. Kind of amazing. And your portfolio, Mark, you know, it includes this accelerating new tech push, which of course has gained momentum since the crisis, including a new partnership you guys announced just 2 weeks ago, right, with Microsoft. Satya Nadella yesterday said that there's been 2 years of digital transformation in the 2 months here, and we'll get into it, but I'm guessing that applies to you guys. Today's session with Mark will be 45 minutes and will be run as a Q&A. actually right after this call, Mark has to go take a call with Michael Jordan and Mark Cuban and Steve Ballmer. And I jokingly said, "Oh, good, can we come? We'd love to be in that room. We won't say anything, I promise. We'll be good." And by the way, mentioning Microsoft, our good friend Ron Pessner from school, who was at Microsoft, just said hello and thanks to having you come. So let's get started, Mark. Members have submitted a number of questions ahead of time. So I think one of the first things that we all want to know is, OMG, what's it been like to lead during this COVID-19 in such a high profile position? What have you learned about leading under radical uncertainty? Talk to us about that.
Phil, thank you so much, by the way, for having me and allowing me to participate in this. You've been a great friend over the last 2 decades plus, so I appreciate all the great work that you continue to do. It's been unbelievable. We've had this particular year for the NBA has been particularly difficult, starting with, you may recall, the GM of the Houston Rockets back in October. Daryl Morey put out a tweet, 7-word tweet that really changed our business.
7 words that shook the world.
Yeah, it shook our world, that's for sure.
Please.
And we have, we haven't been on CCTV since then. We then, in January, we lost our former longtime commissioner, David Stern. That same month, a few weeks later, we lost Kobe Bryant, and then coronavirus. So it's been a really trying time for all of us at the NBA in particular this year. But what I've learned from that is just how important culture is, how important people are. Our organization is an organization that's made up of extraordinary people. And I think one of the things that we've learned coming through this is how in times of crisis, how you deal with that crisis really brings you closer together. And unfortunately, we've had a lot of practice this year. So I feel that we have gotten closer. Even, it's interesting, as we deal with working from home, we've had to, like all of you, adapt our style and our approach. And in this particular case, we used to meet as a senior leadership team once a week on Monday mornings. We then very quickly went to 7 days a week. And just in the last, every day, Saturdays and Sundays, every morning, we do Zoom, calls, video calls, and then now we've gone down to 5 days a week, but it's really brought us closer together as a unit.
Yeah. Tell me, what is the process in this world, this coronavirus world, for making decisions? I mean, you and the NBA are engaged in, obviously possibly restarting the season, we hope, playoffs. Are there, and you have all these constituencies, your normal constituencies, but I'm also, guessing more government constituencies and public health constituencies and so on. How are you making those decisions? Are there people you go to for help outside of the immediate stakeholders? What's it like with the team owners, and tell us about that.
Absolutely. So our focus, Phil, is on data and trying to get as much data as we can. We do hope that we can restart this season, but that's going to be based on our discussions and information that we get from the public health experts, from the CDC. We've been engaged, quite frankly, from January with
because of China, right?
Exactly right. So we got a little bit of a peek into the potential for this coronavirus, because we have about 200 people in our offices in China, in Beijing and Shanghai. And so our offices in China were impacted by this back at the end of January. We actually shut our offices down in Beijing and Shanghai at the end of January. Our All-Star game is in February, and we guests weren't coming into the U.S. for that All-Star game that normally would. Our staff, we limited the number of staff that could come into the U.S. for the All-Star game in February. So we had been dealing with this, and right away we engaged with a world-class virologist named Dr. David Ho from Columbia University. We had known from the HIV virus days when the league and Magic Johnson were dealing with that. So we've known David Ho. We offered to pay him. He said, "I don't want to be paid. I want to be helpful to the NBA." So he's been a close advisor of us. Dr. Vivek Murthy, the former U.S. Surgeon General under President Obama, has been an advisor to us. And again, direct conversations with the World Health Organization and the CDC to make sure that we were educated on the coronavirus. So we're not going to get back to the court until we can ensure that it's safe for our players to do so, our referees, our coaches, and everyone else that would be involved in putting on a basketball game.
So there's a couple of questions I'm going to roll them related to just what you said that members are asking. So, and let's get into it, but let me just roll them out for you. How are you thinking about keeping fans engaged through this time, which of course you've been doing some great stuff on? Do you think you will open up with limited capacity or no fans at all at first? And when the games resume, will individual players have the opportunity to opt out of participating if they aren't comfortable with health and safety conditions? Will they be able to do that without penalty? How are you guys thinking about this? Yeah.
So great question. So on the first one, I would say we spent an inordinate amount of time figuring out how to keep our fans engaged during this time. One, we just think it's so important for the psyche of America and the world while everyone is at home socially isolating to keep them engaged. And so we've done lots of several things. You mentioned Michael Jordan. One of the things that we did is we helped expedite and move up the launch 2 weekends ago of the Last Dance documentary, which is a documentary following the final season of that championship Bulls team that focused on Michael Jordan. It was supposed to launch in June, but when we found ourselves in this situation, we worked with ESPN and the producers to finish up the documentary and get it out early to launch it in April. And it set records for documentaries ever on ESPN. And I can tell you that for our generation, the excitement around having a unique programming like that has been a positive for people's psyche. We created a horse competition, which was a technological feat to be able to, while people were socially isolating, to get different players, NBA players, WNBA players, and former players to actually compete remotely in a horse challenge from where they were. That was broadcast on ESPN and did well. We did an NBA 2K players tournament. So players playing an NBA 2K competition, 16 different teams. We've done the virtual WNBA draft. We every day we program our NBA Instagram account and Twitter account for live Q&As to keep our fans engaged. And then every night on YouTube, we actually have classic games that are being played. So we're doing a lot with respect to keeping our fans engaged, but there's no substitute for the real game. So on your second question, in terms of how are we thinking about restarting the season, I would say that all options right now are on the table because we're going to be guided by the data and we're going to be guided by what's safe and healthy. And so, we're exploring all options. We're exploring options without fans. We're exploring options where we're playing in, single site locations, multiple locations. It's going to be guided again by, what the public health experts suggest are the safest ways to do that for our players.
Can you give us a secret plan that you can't share?
I honestly wish I had the plan and it was secret, but we're still just being guided by where we are there. So those
do you think you'll let the players, choose in terms of whether they feel safe to play?
So obviously one of our most important stakeholders are the players, and we've been in constant contact with them directly. And also with their Players Association, which represents them. And so obviously we're not going to do anything with respect to coming back unless the players collectively feel safe. And that's why we feel a sense of obligation that when we develop our plans for restarting, the players absolutely have to be understanding. Really exactly. And they are, one of the things, there was some reports that came out even today. There were
some reports about agents pressuring no season, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And LeBron sent out a tweet right away saying, I've seen those reports. We want to play. we want to play when it's safe. But the players, you know, and that's LeBron speaking for the players, saying, we love this game. We want to finish this season when it's safe to do so. And he rightly said, no one at the league office has said that we are not planning on restarting games as soon as it's safe to do so. So they are our partners in this, and we're working very closely with them as a stakeholder and communicating with them on a regular basis.
Talk to us about the human side of this for a moment, Mark, for yourself, if you don't mind. So one of the things that's been true is we work with a lot of leaders through this coronavirus thing is we all feel completely exhausted. Are you exhausted? How are you managing through this? How are you managing time, your own time management? What have you learned? Do you have any tricks that we can benefit from?
I'll tell you, I am exhausted, Phil. And you know, I read a recent report that said that people are working in essence, you know, 25 to 33% more at home than they do when they're in the office. You know, I live in Princeton, New Jersey with my family. I typically commute into the city, into New York, which is about an hour and a half each way. So you would think that's an extra 3 hours of my day that I get back.
Right.
Quite frankly, I think I'm putting all of that into working 3 more hours.
Right.
And the situation requires that. What I will tell you, I try to do is create breaks. And, you know, I'm on Zoom calls like I'm sure all of you are.
And you're going to go right from this to a call with Jordan and Cuban and
exactly. And the other night I had a 10 p.m. Zoom call with China, and our folks in China. So it is around the clock. The few times now where I've actually had conference calls, if you guys remember what those were, you know, without video, I actually took those calls and I went for a walk yesterday. It was a nice day in New Jersey.
Sure.
And I did an hour worth of audio conference calls just doing a walk. And I got in a couple of miles walking, and that felt good. And so I would encourage each and every one of you, whether it's working out, getting a Peloton ride in, getting a walk in, you know, those are things that are important for me here with my family. One of the things that I've loved is having dinner with them every night. So we carve out time for that dinner.
And you make that happen. You
make that a priority. You make that a priority. Absolutely. Yes.
By the way, I just want to share with you, one of our members, Darren Burleski, who's a senior leader at CBS Sports Interactive, just wrote, the NBA's had a tough year, as have we all. You're handling it well. Appreciate you being here with us, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Yep. Thank you.
You mentioned N2K, the NBA N2K League. Are there plans to form a closer working relationship between the NBA and the 2K League, and what's traditionally been kind of 2 distinct leagues? How are you?
Yeah, so the NBA 2K League, for those of you that don't know, is a league that we actually launched where it is not, so there are 23 teams there. And those players, so right now, all those teams, with the exception of one, we actually launched our first team based out of China, out of Shanghai. But all the other 22 teams are actually owned and operated by NBA franchises. So, for example, the New York Knicks have a team, and the Brooklyn Nets have a team.
Are the Knicks better in the 2K League?
They
Mark,
are actually. They are. They're very good last year. And so what they've done is they've hired professional video gamers. Yeah. And those players play the NBA 2K game not as LeBron James or Kevin Durant, but they actually play. We work with 2K to create their own avatars. So these are professional video gamers playing at basketball as themselves in the NBA 2K game, and it's been incredible. You know, we actually just announced this week that we're going to tip off our season next week, and the players, because of this construct, can play remotely. And so we're going to launch the season next week with players playing from their individual homes.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you. What about, talk to us a little bit about, so digital, this has been one of your focuses at the NBA for a long time, even before you became Deputy Commissioner. And you guys announced a partnership with Microsoft 2 weeks ago. As I mentioned earlier, Microsoft CEO said yesterday, by the way, they had a bang up quarter, so congratulations to the Microsoft executives on the call today. 15% increase in sales, 35 billion in the quarter. Cloud grew by 59%, crazy. And he said that they're seeing 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months. Do you agree with that statement? Is everything getting accelerated at the NBA digitally?
There's no doubt. There's no doubt about that. And you know, that partnership with Microsoft is such an important one for us. And they're a great partner, and it's new, so we're still going to be learning from each other, but it's going to be focused on artificial intelligence. It's going to be focused on cloud computing. You know, we have a direct to consumer product right now called NBA League Pass. That's not tied to any cable operator subscription. It's priced pretty, it's fairly expensive.
Yeah,
it's fairly expensive because, you know, we in a sense are in some ways competing against the cable distributor operators who are also offering NBA games. And I think one of the disruptions that's happening in the media space right now is this obviously cord cutting and consumers having more choice and being able to access content that they want more directly. And so we understand that that's the future. And a partner like Microsoft is really going to help us create a more robust direct-to-consumer product using their artificial intelligence capabilities, using their product development know-how to help us create the most robust product possible for that diehard NBA fan. So yes, we see innovation there. We see innovation in as we think about returning these games. Let's say there are scenarios, likely scenarios where we're going to be returning to sports and competitions without fans. How do you still make that an engaging experience for the people watching at home? You know, the dirty little secret is really 1% of our total fans in the world ever get to watch an NBA game in arena. So we're going to be innovating and creating, you know, different viewing experiences for 99% of our fans around the world when we do this. And those are things that we've always thought about, but now it's actually going to get accelerated. I know there's been reports about, you know, CGI insertion of fans in Taiwan and in Japan, or places in Asia where the baseball leagues in Japan, where they've started, again, they've put in cardboard cutouts so that it looks like there are fans sitting in the arenas.
Are they actual cardboard or is it CGI generated?
No, they're actual physical cardboard cutouts of fans. It's pretty amazing to see.
That's great.
But you're going to see, I think, different camera angles because with no fans in the building, you can.
What about applause?
You can put cameras in places that you traditionally couldn't because you'd be blocking views and things like that. More miking of the courts. I mean, I think those are all the kinds of innovations that you're going to see coming out of this.
What about things like fan applause? Are there thoughts on how to do that?
Absolutely. Yep. Look, we obviously watched what the NFL did. They tried to have an interactive element. I think having different ways of interaction between fans and somehow piping that into arenas, whether it's audio or visual cues, depending on where you are. And so those are all the kinds of things that I know our team is looking at and everyone's looking at in the business of sports.
Do you see NBA stadiums, you know, arenas changing into one that, you know, sort of are really focused primarily on offering a digital experience for that 99%? What kind of one of our, you know, HBS students who's interested in sports business was asking this question, and I thought, you know, we might want to try to tackle that. How do you think about that?
Yeah, there's no doubt that the arena experience is going to evolve. I mean, I think over the last several years with some of the new arenas that have come online, whether that is the Barclays Center or Sacramento.
Just down the street from me, by the way.
Exactly. You know, Sacramento, Vivek Ranadive, one of the things that he started doing when he built his arena was things like crowdsourcing temperature control. So on their app, if you're in a particular area and you think it's too cold in that area, you can actually put the temperature down. And if enough people in that area put the temperature down, they're able to control the temperature where it comes down in that particular area. So our teams have been innovating. The Golden State Warriors, that new arena is incredible. And some of the uses of technology there are pretty groundbreaking too. I think as we go into this next era and the new normal of post COVID-19, arenas are, and we're already starting to think about what is going to give people, more comfort about their safety. And so there are things that we're looking at there now that are going to address those specific issues. And we're focused on that. The industry's focused on that. So yes, there's no doubt that there will be a new normal, not unlike, quite frankly, the things that we saw after 9/11, which changed how we travel, which changed how we enter buildings forever. I think that COVID-19 will have that same kind of impact on the sports facilities of the future.
So one of the challenges that everyone has is how to manage a remote team. And it's, it means something different, obviously, for you guys, or it has an extra meaning. But talk to me, like, what's it like? So you're in constant contact with these owners. These are successful, opinionated people, right? What have you learned? I mean, what's that like? You also mentioned, by the way, that in one of the, the recent owners calls, Jordan is in the room as everyone's talking about.
The Last Dance. I got the kick out of that. Exactly. Yeah.
What's that? Give us a little bird's eye view into that for a moment. What's that been like? What's Jordan? How does he respond to people talking about his play back in the day?
He loves it. He loves it. Michael, he's got such great credibility, right? Particularly when it comes to the game. And so when Michael talks, people listen because he's the only one in that room that played at the level that he did. And so certainly, on all issues, whether they be business, because he's built a multi-billion-dollar business with Brand Jordan, to the basketball court, he is a well-regarded figure. And so it's nice. To your first question about the international, we have 12 offices around the world. We have about 400 employees that all report into me running our international operations. As I mentioned, big operation in China. We have operations in Africa, in obviously in Europe, in Latin America, in India. And so one of the things that we learned through this, one is just over communicating. You can't over communicate enough. You can't communicate enough with your staff there, because the further the way you are from headquarters, the less you feel like they're in the loop. And so it's important for us. So we created daily updates for the entire organization, where every day we're sending out an update on key decisions that were made, key new pieces of information that they need to know, key learnings. I did, in the course of 48 hours, I actually did video town halls with every single one of our employees around the world. We had never done that before. In the past, what I would have to do is get on airplanes and fly to 12 different offices. We did that within 48 hours. I talked directly to every single one of our international employees, and we continue to do that on a regular basis. So again, we're gonna, I think, operate in a much different way and bring the world in a way just really shrunk, because we're able to cross those barriers now through technology. And I think what this has taught us is this was really always there, but it seemed like there was a high barrier to cross to get there. Now the barriers have been lowered, and I think you're going to see more organizations like us, for example, do more of that engaging directly with our.
Are you going to travel less, do you think, yourself?
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. I mean, I think they're going, that 2-hour meeting in Europe that I generally hop on a plane for, take a red eye, go there, spend the night, and come back, is likely now going to be done through video conference. I'm
glad to hear that. Maybe I'll get to see you more often.
It's my wife doesn't, at first she had no idea what was going on, because she's like, I'm not used to you being here.
Yeah, what are you doing here? Tell me, by the way, say hello.
I mean, this is, as I'm sure for most of you, I mean, in my adult life, this is the longest I've never been on an airplane. I mean, I'm usually on several airplanes a week, and
you must be getting all kinds of emails from Delta, United, whoever you fly. Like, well, we're gonna take care of you, Mark.
Absolutely.
So a couple of other questions that have come in. So LeBron James' attitude, as you mentioned earlier, in terms of we want to play, is fantastic. Fantastic. It's how this person wrote it. But I imagine, I'm just going to read what they said. There are other players, maybe down the play scale or pay scale, I think is what they meant, maybe both, who are suffering and maybe not as immune from, financially and so on. What's the NBA doing to support the less than multimillionaires? Was there a big fund built up to deal with this, or how are you thinking about that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I would say the process starts even earlier than this,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we try to educate our players as they come into the league. We have a rookie transition program about the importance of saving your money, of being prudent, of investing it wisely.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of work on the front end of in the areas of education about we're very blunt about players' average career and what their average career earnings are. And yes, when you start taking taxes out of it, and for some of those players down the scale, they really do need to be responsible about how they manage that money, because their earning window is generally more limited than other industries, because
Yeah.
you've got 5 to 10 years to make that money. And then after that, you're going to have to, go do something else. And so we spend a lot of time up front educating players on that, and
Yeah.
along with the Players Association, and how to do that. In this particular situation, we have had as I mentioned, lots of conversations with the Players Association. We actually worked out something with them where, and this was actually covered in our language with them with our collective bargaining agreement, where in the event that we were to, for whatever reason, have to cancel games, and in this particular case, it was a force majeure provision that included epidemics,
Yeah.
they would have to return a portion of their salary. And so what we did is work out with the union, instead of just cutting off the players at some point with no paychecks in, we actually agreed with the Players Association to gradually take out 25% of their paychecks over a longer period of time, so that our
Yeah.
players would continue to have their paychecks coming in. It's just going to be a little bit lighter than it otherwise would. So those are the kinds of things that we're working through with our Players Association.
One of the topics that's come up a lot for a lot of businesses is whether their insurance, is valid. And, the insurance industry saying, no, this is not, you can't. What kind of, did you guys have insurance that would help you with this specifically pandemic, epidemic kind of situation? Or are you also in conversation with your insurers to figure out what, if anything, they'll cover?
Right. So our biggest expense, if you will, is our labor cost, right? And that is our what we pay the players. They make about 50% of every gross dollar that we generate. So in that agreement, I just mentioned this force majeure provision. We actually, and no other professional sports league, certainly in North America, and that we know of, actually had that provision, which was this force majeure provision that included epidemics. So I can't take credit for that.
So the other leagues not paying their players at all?
They've had to come to different agreements with their Players Association. In ours, it was pretty formulaic. That in the event that an epidemic, as an example, happened, we knew exactly what the result would be. We had to work through the mechanics of that to smooth it out over time, but there was no dispute over that. So that was our biggest risk, and we covered it in that respect. There were certainly other things that we've been insured for, events and those kinds of things that we've really tried to cover contractually. But yes, there are definitely insurance issues that we're working through with different.
Well, if you figure it out on that, let us know. Let's talk about COO, CEO. We have a number of members who are, in fact, we have a big group of CEOs, but we also have a big group of COOs. A number of them were interested is, what's your relationship like with the CEO? How important is that for the success of the organization? What advice do you have for other CEOs about making an impact and working with the CEO? What have you learned about that?
Yeah, Adam Silver, who's the commissioner, he and I have a great working relationship. You know, he's been the commissioner for 6 years, and he appointed me the deputy commissioner, which was his previous role prior to becoming commissioner. And so
And you've
Adam's
worked together you've known each other for a long time. Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So I've been at the league for 20 years, going 21 years. I've worked directly for Adam for probably 12 or 13 of those, even before when he was the president of NBA Entertainment and I was the head of global partnership. So we've had a great working relationship, and I think that's important. You know, having worked together for that long, I can kind of complete his sentences. I know what his thought process is, and I kind of view my role
And you
as
divide certain things up. I don't know if you want to say that publicly, right? But like in this COVID environment, you've
absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, I think, for example, there's, in the constant communication with our team owners, in an effort to engage with every single one of them every week, we split up the calls, right? So that one of us isn't calling 30 of them, and that one's calling 15, the other one's calling 15, and then we'll switch. And so those are the kinds of things where I'll take on specific projects. You know, the international business, all those heads of my regions report directly to me on that, and I'm running, you know, the business operations of the NBA in my role. But Adam and I have a very close working relationship. We talk several times a day, and I think it's important to be aligned and know what the expectations are with your CEO.
Yeah, there's a couple more things here: culture, and you kind of touched on that a little bit, and also any silver linings you haven't expected. But on the culture piece, say a little bit more about like one of the things a lot of our members are struggling with is, you know, obviously employees dealing with fear. We also know that, you know, just in this world that we're in, there's more loneliness, there's more mental challenges, there's sadly more domestic violence at a cultural level because people are in their homes. Have you guys learned, and you've got 400 around the world that you're working with, I'm sure fear issues are coming up and other challenges, getting burnt out, you know, being on screens all day. What have you learned about managing your culture and even, you know, developing it in this moment? Would love to hear about that.
Yeah, it's a great point. You know, our calling, if you will, is compete with intensity, lead with integrity, and inspire play, right?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we're all competitors. We all care deeply about our work, and so we compete intensely. Integrity, again, I think, you know, for those of you that have seen the decisions that we've made, we're led by you know, our integrity, and we always try to do the right thing and make the right decisions. At the same time, we like to have fun. We're a sports league, and we recognize that. And during this time, you know, you tend to, when you're dealing with crisis, you tend to lean more towards the intensity. And I think it's important for us to really communicate to people that we still have to have fun, that you have to take time for yourselves, mental wellness breaks, to invest in that. I'll give you an example. We did as part of a way to just kind of keep the mood light and keep people laughing and fresh, we did kind of a dance challenge, and they asked me to do a dance.
You were tricky.
And I went to my wife and my kids, and I go, really? Like, this is going to be really embarrassing. But I did it. And you know, we had different employees dance to Pharrell's Happy. And that's the kind of thing that keeps people, you know, at least keeps them
I want
laughing.
to see that. Is that recorded, Mark?
It is recorded, Phil. It is recorded.
I think that goes on your highlight reel, my friend.
My teenage boys wanted to put it on TikTok, but I wouldn't let them put it on TikTok.
Oh boy, that's a great idea. Well, one of the things I wanted to share with folks on the call about you, and I think it's coming across, but you know, you're one of these great leaders. I can say that's both, you know, smart and capable, but also humble. And you know, we had a great interview for my book on asking for help, and you talked a lot about that. You also, and you know, you did me one of the greatest favors anyone's ever done, which is you introduced me to my, you know, one of my favorite, you know, icons, legends of all time, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is also one of the great great leaders. In fact, I got into a big argument in Chicago with a bunch of kids, you know, a couple months ago about whether it was Kareem or Magic. And, you know, I love Kareem. The whole person is amazing, right? Like, not only was he a great player, 6 championship rings and all the rest of it, but as a human being. And he is also himself humble and a constant learner. I wonder if you could say a little bit just about your own experience and what have you been asking for help with? Probably everything, but what have you been asking for help with during the crisis? And who do you
Yeah,
turn
no,
to?
I appreciate that, Phil. And you know, I think my view of the world really does come from a perspective of where I come from, right? You know, if you think about the improbability, quite frankly, of me being here and being in this position,
Definitely.
you know, some people say I can't believe I pinched myself. I mean, literally, what had to happen was my
You were
father, who
born
was
during the Vietnam War.
right. I mean, my father, who was born in Jamaica, migrates to the U.S. as a teenager, joins the U.S. Air Force, flies to Vietnam, meets my mother, falls in love, has me, brings us back, right? I can't tell
Right,
you
which
how
many
many.
servicemen did not do.
Exactly. And so as a young, you know, 23-year-old, he made the decision at that point, which many other 23-year-olds made, to leave
Yeah.
their kids behind. But he brought, and by the way, my mom and dad are still married to this day, right?
And
So
in East Flatbush, right?
in East
Still
Flatbush,
the
exactly, living in the same house I grew up in. So to bring me back, and then for me to go to, you know, PS Public School 181 and in a tough neighborhood in Brooklyn, the IS 227 to Brooklyn
Yeah.
Tech, you know, it's really improbable that sort of the things would happen where I end up going to Cornell and Harvard Business School, and now the deputy commissioner of the NBA. So I never lose sight of that, and
Yeah.
and that's why I wake up every morning thinking I'm in a dream, because that kind of stuff just doesn't happen. And so I just have that perspective. You know, my mom was a janitor at Automotive High School, and that's where I did my summer jobs. And so, you know, I know the value of hard work. My dad worked at the Brooklyn Hospital as an engineer. And so, you know, so I've grown up around parents and people who believe in hard work. And that's how you get results. And so I think that's colored my view. I mean, I think in terms of, you know, what I'm asking for in terms of help, it is balancing. It is, you know, how do you manage all of these things? How do you manage that stress? I wish I could say I've figured that out. You know, Phil, my incredible wife. I mean, she is
She's amazing.
really, really incredible, and I'm able to lean on her for her advice on how to deal with a lot of these issues. And so I'm thankful and grateful for that as well.
Well, you know, we have a minute left. I'll just say I'm just deeply touched. Mark, you and I have been friends for a long time, and I just thank you for thank you for ending with this and for sharing more of your story here. It is profoundly inspiring, and as you say, improbable. But you know, you're also you're the kind of remarkable person with a long-term view, a real sense of humility, and as you said, where you've come from. We've talked about this. You know, we both had jobs in high school, and my best friend was Vietnamese, actually, who helped me get my first job in the United States. But it's just been such a treat. I know you have to run, so you know, tell Michael Jordan hello from all of us, and Mark Cuban, and Steve Ballmer, and Cy, and the rest of them. And I just want everybody on the chat just to join me in saying thank you. A real round of applause. Thank you. I know you have so much going on. It's just really so meaningful that you could spend it with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. And good luck to all of you. I hope that you all stay safe and stay healthy during this time. But thank you so much, Phil. And thank you all.
You're a good man. And if people want to stay on and reflect on Mark's comments, I'll just stay on the line and you guys can decide to do it. Mark, you have to go. Say, well, tell Jordan I still think Kareem is better, but don't actually say
I won't pass that message along. All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right.